So there's a writer, her name is Rebecca Lyons, and she wrote an article for Relevant Magazine called How to Deal with Life's Curveballs. And she describes the situation. Talk about a curveball. So she's a new speaker. She's very nervous. She's flying, has a connecting flight in Atlanta, the world's biggest airport.
Yeah.
And her flight's delayed. So she's barely going to make it. Grabs her stuff, runs, barely makes it to the next flight, gets on the flight, gets relaxed, gets on the plane takes off. And she reaches in her bag because she's got 3 45-minute talks she's going to be giving.
Oof.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
Never prepared for that kind of thing. That's a lot of work. 3 45-minute talks. Of course, everything's on her laptop, which is in the seat back of the previous flight.
Oh, no.
Oh.
That's why you don't be putting stuff in there.
And so, who don't ever put your laptop
Forget
in there?
stuff.
Why did she do that?
I'm breaking into a cold sweat just thinking about that.
And so, again, she hasn't done much speaking at this point in her career. 3 45-minute talks. Everything's on a laptop that she will not get back. They can't even keep track of your luggage when you know where it is and it's supposed to be
It
there.
has a tag on it.
Yeah. And so she essentially had no choice but to drop to her knees weeping in a hotel room
Yeah, that's what I would do.
and asking God to just give her whatever she needed. In her weakness, Lord, give her strength. That's what she's asking
Just
for.
write with pen and paper.
Well, and she just kind of felt God responding to her. Like, do you trust me? And do you trust I'll give you the words? You prepared. You'll be okay. And so she just leaned on the Lord. She was nervous, but she went for it, and it went fine. You guys ever encountered situations like that? I mean, that's pretty extreme. I have one kind of close to it, but...
And I know I have, not like that exact vein at some point, but nothing comes to mind.
For me, and Ron's heard this 16 times, but I don't think you ladies have heard this. Tragically, when I was a high school teacher, there was a young woman who was a ninth grader when she was in my class in geography, and she got a brain tumor, and it was terminal. And within a year, she had passed away. And it was incredible. This public school let us take 3 or 4 busloads of kids, many of whom had never experienced loss in their family. We got to travel and went to a church in North Minneapolis. And it was a beautiful service, primarily African-American church. And the kids were grieving, like a whole section of just high school kids. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting, and there's like a time where they allowed family and friends to come up and say a few words about her life, right next to her casket in front of her parents. And I remember the school social worker, her name's Barb. She came up and knelt next to me in the back as I'm like barely holding it together / at moments weeping. Mm-hmm. And she goes, "Hey, Brian." It's like, "Yeah, the kids would like you to say something."
Oh, my.
Now, because again, a lot of them had been in my class, and I was asked to comfort them early on when we found out about her passing. And what am I going to say? No, I'm sorry. I'm a teacher. You children will have to speak for yourselves at a funeral. And I remember standing in line, and of course, I would be the last one to speak, would be announced shortly before I went up. And I remember having a conversation with the Lord that was a little embarrassing, but it was like, well, you put me here, Lord.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to say standing next to a casket of a 16-year-old girl in front of her weeping parents. But I know you'll have something for me. So you better show up. Because my mind was totally just blank.
Yeah.
My mind was racing. My heart was racing. And I barely remember what I said. But the Lord showed up. And my weakness, my surrender was what enabled me to say something coherent. All I remember is I started with something like, "We've all been changed." And I talked about her, and and it was meaningful. I guess it went well, but I get no credit for it. Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of the moments that I realized the Lord might be able to use me to speak through me in ministry. Like that was kind of the first inkling I had that maybe there'd be a future for me in that, outside of a classroom, if I get out of the Lord's way. And she makes the point in this article that really when we encounter situations like this is where it doesn't sound normal in Scripture when, in our weakness, that's when we find strength. But it truly is in surrender that we can find those words. And I think we'll all experience this stuff in life circumstances. It just takes the courage or the pressure to have to say yes. to be able to stand up in those moments and do what you need to do. Now, I'm not super proud of the way I talk to the Lord. He's not mad at me for it. He lets you be honest with him.
Yeah.
But try it. And she even recounted in this article Moses' encounter with God. It's actually kind of funny. Here's how she recounts it. God says to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh so you can bring my people out of Egypt." Moses is like, "Wait, who? Me?" "Yeah, you. I'll be with you." "Who will I say sent me?" He's like, "Well, tell them it's me." "Well, what if they don't believe me?" "Well, they will. I'll have you perform miracles." And Moses is like, "Well, I'm not very good at talking." Like, God consistently picks people who are not ready for it because it's their weakness where strength is found.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, but in my experience, it's true.
My favorite part of that story is God gets like angry and then still says, "Fine, I'll send your brother with you."
Right. Yeah, that's so great. And people don't even remember that Aaron did most of the speaking. And many believe that Moses actually was a stutterer.
Mm-hmm.
There's the way it's written. It
Slow
seems
of
that,
tongue
yeah,
is what it says.
like he struggled. It wasn't that it's like, oh, I'm not very good at talking in front of crowds. No, it's like he struggled with speaking.
And so the reason that's important is because the Egyptians would have valued eloquence. And so he didn't think his message would be received.
And God chose him. Think of what he could do through you in your weakness.